When I was 15 years old, my youth group went on a mission trip to Oklahoma City to help with tornado relief. Basically, we spent about 5 days picking up branches and other trash from certain people's properties and filling up quite a few of those really giant dumpsters that have to be hauled off by really large trucks. Every day for lunch, we would all load up into our 2 vans and drive somewhere to eat. On, I want to say around the 3rd day, we went to this gas station / truck stop that had both a Wendy's and a Subway inside of it. My 3 friends and I, all girls by the way, decided we wanted Wendy's. We all ordered our food and chose a booth that fit the 4 of us. We were a group of about 30 teenagers, so every time we went out in public, at least one person would always ask us who we were and why we were there. We usually used this as a chance to try and tell them about our mission trip, our church, and maybe try and share the gospel with them. In the booth next to the one my friends and I were sitting in, there was this skinny middle-aged man. He looked to be in his middle to late 30s and he was sitting all alone with his laptop. He seemed to be on Skype with someone and he had earbuds in. He was in a corner booth so he could see us and we could see him, but we couldn't see what was on his laptop. When he noticed us, he ended his conversation on Skype and asked us who we were and why we were there. We told him all about our trip and our church. Nothing that we haven't done before. Then we just went right back to eating our food. After a couple of minutes, he asked if one of us could help him figure out how to download a movie onto his laptop before leaving the free Wi-Fi. We all kind of just eyed each other, sort of questioning whether we should do it or not. Then I decided that I would just go over there, take a look, and try and help him real quick. Now, these 2 booths were sort of separated and near the bathroom, so all the adults and other kids were sort of blocked from our view by the trash can. So I walked over to his table and stood next to it, and then he angled his laptop so that I could see it. He had his browser open to just the home page and nothing else. I had asked him what movie it was that he wanted to download, and then he told me. I think I just typed into Google whatever the movie title was and free download. Something dumb like that. I was sort of awkwardly leaning down over the table to type. He seemed sort of annoyed or amused that I searched that, as if he knew a better way. He didn't really say anything, probably because he's the one asking for help here. I wasn't really having any luck and I was getting tired of standing up, so he tried to convince me to sit down next to him. I really don't know what came over me, but I decided just for a second I was gonna sit down. I thought that I would be done really fast. After sitting down, he seems to not even care about the movie anymore, and he starts trying to show me some of the other things on his laptop. And then he tells me that he was Skyping with his girlfriend. But by that point, I realized that I'd really made a mistake. I'm eyeing my friends now who've been watching this entire interaction, and they seem really worried about me. So I give them a look and then mouth the words, "Please get me out of here." One of my really close friends then gets up and comes over to the table. She says that my youth leader really wants to talk to me. I quickly get up and just make my way to the bathroom as fast as I can. I don't know why, but I just started crying. I felt so dumb for getting myself into this really weird situation with this weird stranger. My best friend calms me down though and tells me to go to the van because we're about to leave anyway. So I go all the way through the Subway and gas station portion of the place and then go out the door. Apparently while I was waiting in the van, this guy at some point had got up, gathered his things, then asked one of the youth leaders for my name and number. I'm pretty sure that he thought that she was my age because she looks really young, but she kinda just looked at him really confused and then told him she wasn't going to give him that information. He left, and I watched from the van as he then got into a car with another guy. That's when I realized that the second man in the car was probably waiting for me. I don't know what they had planned or if I'm really just being paranoid, but I'm really glad I never found out.
When I was around the age of 20, I had just recently gotten my first ever paying job at my 24-hour local Taco Bell. The job was okay, it wasn't a well-paying job, and the other workers were somewhat rude, but it's better than not having a job. My first few months of working there went pretty well of me being the cashier. I'd collect the money and take customers' orders, and the job was actually pretty easy, and I was fine with it. One day, my manager told me that I had to work the night shift for a week, 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. I was pretty upset, but I couldn't argue with him, so I took the shift. The first few nights went okay. After around 11 p.m., people would stop coming in, and I had maybe 3 or 4 people come in at around 1 for a taco or something. One night, it was around 12:30 a.m., and it was just me and 2 other workers who made the food. I was sitting down in one of the chairs playing a game on my phone when I heard the door open. I looked to see a man, I'd say in his mid-40s, with a hat and jacket on. He had a long beard and his hair was all messy and greasy. I politely welcomed him and asked if I could take his order, but he didn't say anything. He just stood in front of me looking at me with a blank expression on his face. I assumed that he was on something or had some sort of disability, but just then he started to walk away and out the front door. I have to admit that I was a bit freaked out, but really thought nothing of it and continued to do my shift and whatnot. However, I then started to get the feeling that I was being watched somehow and was getting paranoid. Finally, 2 a.m. came around and the other employee, we'll call her Michelle, came in for her shift. Her and I were really good friends, so we chatted for a bit while I was finishing cleaning the counters. At some point in the conversation, she said that she'd be right back and that she had to use the restroom. A few minutes went by, which then turned into 10 minutes and eventually into 20. I then thought to myself, what could she possibly be doing in there that's taking her so long? At this point, I was starting to get worried and thought that something might have happened to her. I slowly walked over to the women's restroom and opened the door just a bit. However, I noticed that all of the lights in the women's restroom were off when they should have been on at all times. I turned them on and yelled out, "Michelle, are you okay?" There was no response from her. I wanted to let her have privacy, but I had the strong feeling that something wasn't right. I went inside calling Michelle again and again. Once I passed a stall, I heard what sounded like a light cry and whimpering. I opened the stall door and was shook with fear. I saw the same exact man from earlier holding Michelle while putting his hand around her mouth. That's not the most disturbing part though. The man was holding a large knife against Michelle's throat. Her eyes were filled with fear and was crying like crazy. She was scared for her life. The man then said in a raspy voice, "If you don't get all of that money from the register, I will slit her throat and blood will be all over this room." I was so scared that I couldn't even speak. I could tell that the more time I stood there, the more angry he got. I ran to the register and took all of the cash out in a bag and went to the bathroom and gave it to him. He then let go of her and pushed her to me. He ran out the front door, never to be seen again. All the while, Michelle was crying on me and thanking me for saving her life. We of course called the cops, but nothing ever came of the man. And the cameras we had in the store didn't help as the footage was too blurry to identify who the man was. Michelle and I quit a week later and both started working at a grocery store. However, sometimes I think that what would have happened to her had I not went into the bathroom to check on her. That still freaks me out till this day. My name is Daniel, and I was about 20 years old when this happened to me at a Taco Bell. I've always been the type of person who would eat fast food almost every day. Whether it would be for lunch or dinner or even a snack, I would almost go out for fast food at least once a day. I know, not that healthy, but that's just how I live. One night, I had just finished my shift from my full-time job and working over 8 hours at a car dealership. I was driving and planning to head home, but thought about doing my daily routine of getting some fast food. The dealership I worked at is kind of in a rural area, which I guess is in the outskirts of my city, which means that there aren't a lot of places around. My house is about a 20-mile drive depending if there's traffic or not. Anyway, I didn't see a McDonald's or Burger King or anything like that. However, I decided to take a different way, hoping I would find a place to eat that was open late. I ended up seeing a Taco Bell up ahead. Not my favorite fast food place, but at least it's food and I couldn't drive home without anything in my stomach. I pulled into the parking lot, got out of my car and walked in. I ordered my food, sat down at a table and enjoyed the tacos I was having. I was there for about a good 15 minutes before I was done and planning on leaving. I walked out of the door with my phone in hand, texting one of my coworkers when some guy ran up to me out of breath. He looked tired and thirsty and was very sweaty as if he just ran a marathon. He said to me while still hyperventilating, Hey man, do you think you could just spare me a few dollars? I just need a soda or something. I told him that I wasn't sure as I don't really carry cash often, but that I would check in the car for a few dollars. I was in my car looking for some money in the back seat when I hear my passenger car door open and then close. I look to see the man in the passenger seat holding a gun in his hands, pointing it directly at my face. You could imagine the panic I was in, and my blood turned cold, and it didn't help that he had a very angry look on his face. He said these exact words, "Now, you are going to listen to exactly as I say, or I won't hesitate to shoot you in the head and blood and the brain matter will be all over the inside of your car." I remained calm and said, "Okay, so what do you want me to do here?" He said to pull up the GPS on my phone and to drive to a specific address. At this point, I'm pissing myself and hoping that one of the employees at Taco Bell would see this, but they didn't notice, and I didn't want to risk trying anything to get help. I put in the given address and it was about 10 miles. I put my car into drive and we start making our way over there. The more I started to look at him, the more angry he got and the closer the gun got to my head. I then came to a red light and decided to make a decision. I'm a pretty big guy, 6'5", and when I was 10, my grandfather would always take me hunting and even taught me how to take a gun away from someone before he unfortunately passed away. I decided to listen to my grandpa's advice, but it's been so long since he taught me how to take a gun away from someone, but I had to try it and I knew this was my chance. I tried to remember the steps and attempted to grab the gun from him. The gun eventually dropped to the floor, but thankfully I was faster than he was and I grabbed the gun before he did. I pointed at him and said, "Now you listen to me. If you don't get out of my car, I will shoot you." He then got out of my car and started walking along the sidewalk, never to be seen again. I finally made it home safe and I felt relieved. I then gave the gun to the authorities, but I don't know what happened to it after that. And I still have no idea where he was leading me to, and what would have happened had he gotten the gun first when it fell. I still have nightmares about it happening. So, I guess the lesson is to be careful out there, and not to go to Taco Bell or any other fast food restaurant so late at night. You never know what could happen.
Have you ever seen someone fill their cup with soda first and then put the ice in? It happened twice yesterday. I was having lunch at Wendy's and watched in horror as a middle-aged woman went up, filled her drink to the brim with lemonade, and then put the ice in. She seemed shocked when the lemonade splashed all over her arm. I continued eating my sandwich, laughing to myself. But then, the same thing happened not a minute later. Her husband, a gray-haired man wearing shorts despite the cold weather, went up to the machine and filled his cup with Coke, then pressed the ice. Splash. He yelped as Coke splattered all over his shirt. What are these people? Crazy? I shook my head, biting back laughter. I watched as the man took a seat next to his wife and pulled out his fries. Let's hope he eats properly, jeez. But he didn't. He plucked out a French fry, dipped it in ketchup, and stuck the other end in his mouth. Wait, what? I watched in horror as he repeated the process. He dipped the half-eaten fry in ketchup, the same end he dipped before, and then took another bite from the plain side. His eyes met mine. I quickly tore my gaze away, and pretended to stare at my chicken sandwich. I took a few bites, checked my email, and then got up to refill my soda. I glanced up at the man. He was still staring at me. I walked up to the machine, keeping my eyes locked on the soda. I filled my cup with ice first, like a normal person, and filled it with Dr. Pepper, but the entire time I felt him watching me. I finally turned around and walked back to the table. As I did, my eyes fell on the wife. She was eating her burger upside down. The sesame seed top bun was pointing downwards as she brought the burger to her mouth and took a bite, and her husband was still staring at me. Okay, so they eat weirdly. No big deal, right? I mean, I make peanut butter and honey sandwiches, and I've put ketchup on salad a few times. But I couldn't shake the unsettled feeling in my gut. I finished eating, took my empty tray to the garbage, and dumped everything in. I glanced back. The couple was no longer looking at me, thank goodness. They were just munching away, both on the same side of the four-seater table, staring at their food. I walked down the narrow hall to the bathroom, but as soon as I clicked the lock shut on the stall door, I heard the loud creak of the door opening, then footsteps. My heart plummeted as I saw legs under the stall door, bare legs, despite the cold weather. It was him. I was sure of it. The shorts-wearing, ice-first, weird ketchup application man. "Where are you, damn it?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the bathroom. My blood ran cold. I clamped a hand over my mouth, trying to muffle my ragged breathing. I glanced at the stall door. It looked flimsy enough to kick in. Through the gap between the door and the stall, I saw a sliver of the man. Gray hair, black shirt, khaki shorts. It was undoubtedly him. He stood still, then, slowly, took a step. "I know you can hear me," he shouted. Every muscle was paralyzed. He is going to kill me, or mug me. I should have never looked, never should have stared. The crackle of static flooded the bathroom. "I can hear you," a voice said, through an unseen speaker. Relief flooded me. Oh, he's on the phone. Thank goodness. Sam and I are in position. We are going to start in 1 minute. Be ready. A horrible tearing sound filled the bathroom. With a wet splash, the skin on his legs slowly wrinkled and warped, then cascaded to the ground. Nausea leapt into my throat, and I cupped my hand over my mouth, resisting the urge to vomit. At first, I thought he'd somehow shed his skin and muscle, and just his bones were left. But somehow, it was worse than that. So much worse. The white, bone-like legs stepped out of the skin pooled at the floor, revealing long feet that ended in pointed black nails. The thing stepped towards the door, and I saw a flash of white in the gap between the door and the wall. Then, it was gone. A split second later, I heard the screams erupt outside. Shrieking, terrible screams that shook me to my core. I leapt out of the bathroom, and in a panic, wrenched open the window. Like a coward, I rolled out into the grass and ran as fast as I could, until I was in the center of town. The next day, I saw the report on the news. 7 wounded in freak accident at local Wendy's. All injuries attributed to a small fire that broke out after the fryer malfunctioned in the kitchen. All patients are recovering well, but suffer no memory of the traumatic event.